Child Abuse Prevention, Recognition, and Reporting. That is the topic for today's video training. Before you sit down to watch the video training, you will need a copy of the listening form to help you go through this video training. The form is available from the Extension office, or you can get a copy from the OSU Extension website. The web address is www.washington.osu.edu. Click on the 4-H page, and then you will also click on the Forms page and look for the listening guide for child abuse prevention and recognition. So, why is it so important that we participate in this annual training? Number one, it's important because it is a policy of OSU Extension and of The Ohio State University. But I think number two, the most important reason for participating in this annual recognition training, so we can be better equipped as 4-H volunteers and as 4-H staff to be able to recognize child abuse neglect, to be able to prevent it, and then also to be able to provide some support for families that need it when they are struggling. In the 4-H program, we provide a caring environment for our youth. We also provide a safe environment, and we also provide a welcoming environment. So part of all of that comes together for us as 4-H volunteers and staff to be better equipped in how we can help our youth and families thrive in a difficult world.
Hello. Why annual training? Every child has the right to be protected from abuse and neglect. As a faculty member, a staff member, a student, or volunteer in one of our many programs, we all need to be able to recognize the signs of abuse. We recognize that this topic today may be sensitive for some of our viewers, but this training is necessary annually. The Child Abuse and Neglect Training is the policy of The Ohio State University. We want to properly train, educate, and warn about the dangers of child abuse and neglect, because abuse can occur in any state and any county. Everyone has a part to play in preventing child abuse and neglect. The objectives of this course today are to familiarize you with Ohio State University's Protection of Minors policy, to define child abuse and neglect, to identify the 4 main types of abuse and neglect, to learn about the Ohio State University's required reporting requirements, to know how to report and what information you need, and to be aware of what happens after a report is made.
The numbers really are staggering. In 2014, the last year for which we have available statistics, over 702,000 children nationwide were the victims of child abuse and neglect. Here in Ohio, 18,187 children were victims of child abuse and neglect. 8,819 received investigations. Maltreatment was indicated, but sometimes not sufficient evidence is there to charge. We also know that over 40,000 children and families received referrals to help meet their needs.
The Ohio State University's Child Abuse and Neglect Training Policy is 1.50. You may find this policy at go.osu.edu/150. The university is committed to providing the best experience possible for our minors. Faculty, staff, appointees, students, student employees, graduate associates, and volunteers are expected to hold themselves to the highest standards of conduct when interacting with minors. This policy establishes requirements for those in the university community who work in activities and programs with minors with the goal of safeguarding the well-being of minors. This is the policy of The Ohio State University. In addition to the requirements of this policy for faculty, staff, appointees, students, student employees, graduate associates, and volunteers, they must adhere to the obligations that may be imposed by applicable law, including but not limited to the Ohio Revised Code sections 2151.421 and 2921.22. The Child Abuse and Neglect Recognition Reporting Policy 1.50 applies to faculty, staff, appointees, students, and student employees, including graduate associates and volunteers. As a volunteer, you are required to complete the volunteer enrollment process, which includes your program registration, which can be accomplished by turning in your volunteer enrollment form to your OSU Extension County professional. Sign the standards of behavior, which are located on the back of that enrollment form. Complete your criminal history, fingerprint, background check. Clear results must be on file before beginning service and every 4 years thereafter. You must also complete an annual training of the Child Abuse and Neglect Policy 1.50 and also be held accountable for this process. The Standards of Behavior form is located on the back of the Ohio 4-H volunteer enrollment process. We require our volunteers to review this form and sign these standards of behavior on an annual basis. This helps us to set the expectations for positive behavior. We prohibit illegal, harassing, abusive, bullying behaviors, and also you should not put yourself intentionally in a one-on-one situation with a minor. The federal legislation sets the foundation for state laws. Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, CAPTA, has amended by the CAPTA Reauthorization Act of 2010. Any recent act or failure to act on the part of a parent or caretaker which results in death, serious physical or emotional harm, sexual abuse or exploitation, or an act or failure to act which presents an imminent risk of serious harm. The State of Ohio, or the Ohio Revised Code, are the laws that govern the child abuse. Again, the federal legislation sets the foundation for state laws. State laws in the state of Ohio may be found under the Ohio Revised Code. The Ohio Revised Code for Child Abuse and Neglect are 2151.031 and 2919.22. These are for the definition of abused child or the definition of endangering children. The definition of child abuse or neglect is when a child has suffered or faces a substantial threat of suffering any physical or mental wound, injury, disability, or condition that reasonably indicates abuse or neglect. This also includes any conduct of a sexual nature that may be harmful to a minor's mental, emotional, or physical welfare. There are 4 main types of child maltreatment. These 4 types include neglect, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, or physical abuse.
Neglect occurs when there is intent to not provide care. The failure of an adult to provide for a child's basic educational or medical needs is neglect. This might include lack of food, shelter, or proper clothing. Or maybe it's being left alone with a lack of supervision. There's also when a child is self-care and their personal hygiene is not up to par the way it should be because an adult is not helping them with their hygiene. Or it might be a lack of education, medical or dental treatment, and even abandonment when the child is being left alone and uncared for. Emotional abuse includes degrading comments and name-calling that negatively impact self-esteem. It may also be a pattern of harmful interactions between a child and adult, such as criticizing, belittling, or rejecting comments that continue to downgrade the child. This may also include chronic acts that interfere with psychological and/or social development of the child. Sexual abuse occurs when a person uses power and directly involves a child in any sexual act, involves the child in pornography, or forces the child to witness sexual acts. This includes any sexual activity with or inflicted on a child, as well as the act may be for the sexual gratification of the perpetrator or a third party. The age of consent in Ohio is 16, except teachers, administrators, coaches, or anyone in a position of authority over the minor defined as under age of 18 in Ohio. The person in authority may be guilty of sexual battery, per Ohio Revised Code. There are many questions about consensual sex between a minor and an 18-year-old. In speaking with Job and Family Services, the rule of thumb is that any child 13 and under, even if consensual, would be a concern. Other ages would be considered on a case-by-case basis. Physical abuse is any physical injury inflicted other than by accidental means. So as we take a look at the difference between abuse versus accident, we have to think about severity or the nature of the injury. Where is the injury? What is the size and shape of the injury? Does the story match the injury? Is the injury consistent with the child's abilities? Also, how many injuries does the child have? As well as how often is the child injured? Corporal punishment is permissible in the state of Ohio. Abuse is determined by the severity of the injury, how many injuries at one time, or even how many serious injuries over a period of time. Opinion of abuse can be subjective by both the professional investigating the abuse as well as the prosecutor who makes the decision to file abuse. Indicators of child abuse or neglect. If a child is wearing long sleeves, they may be trying to cover up marks or bruises they received from abuse. A child may be reluctant to change their clothes in gym because someone may see marks or injuries they have obtained during abuse. They may not participate in activities because they may be hurt due to injuries occurred from abuse. Chronic hunger, tiredness, or chronically being late to school could be signs of neglect. Parents may use different defensive tactics when they are abusing their child or the child is being abused in the home, failing to return calls and make appointments because they do not want to be confronted with the concern or problem. If a parent becomes angry, it could be because they have issues with their anger and why the child is being abused, or they may just be trying to intimidate you. If they refer to the child as bad or different, this is a signal that in some way they see the child as more challenging or different, and that they may be scapegoated or could be why they are abusing the child. If a parent is overly protective, this could be one way they are trying to protect the secret of abuse by not allowing the child out of their sight. If a parent feels inadequate, they may not be equipped to appropriately address the challenges of parenting and may be abusing or neglecting the child. Here are some do's and don'ts to keep in mind. It is not the job of the reporter to investigate or know for sure if the abuse or neglect has occurred. Never ask leading questions, such as, "So did your dad touch you?" or "Did your mom hit you, causing that bruise?" So we also want to remember to remain calm when we're talking with children. Never ask leading questions and do not investigate. Don't promise the child that you will not tell, because you do have to report, and that involves telling someone about what you know. It also involves taking action, which means making that report that is necessary to keep a child out of harm's way or to get them help, and to maintain confidentiality. The only people you should be talking to are the reporting folks, as well as making sure that extension professionals know about the situation. Don't ask yourself, "What if I'm wrong?" Ask yourself, "What if I'm right?" Reporting. We are required to report. and we must immediately report all incidents. So there's 2 phone calls that will be made. Imminent danger or life-threatening danger at hand, it's going to be 911. Or if it's non-life-threatening, we will call the Washington County Children's Services 24-hour hotline, which is 740-373-3485. The second phone call is going to be to the OSU University Police. This phone number is 614-292-2121. Since we are part of OSU Extension and 4-H programs, we're going to indicate that we are calling per policy 1.50. This would activate a crisis assessment and response team and ensures that action is going to be taken. When you make the phone calls, take note of the names of the folks that you talk to. Write those down because you're going to need that information later for a written report. So within 1 business day, you're going to file a report, and you're going to complete the child abuse, sexual abuse, or neglect incident report form. It is found on the OSU website at go.osu/150form. As a 4-H volunteer, you should also contact a County 4-H professional so we can help you complete and submit the report. This is an example of what the report looks like. It can be printed out as well as submitted online, and so this is going to be completed with the help of a 4-H staff member. When making a report, you will need the name, age, and address of the child or children, name and address of the parents and guardians involved, as well as the name of the person or persons you suspect is abusing or neglecting the child and their address if available. Additionally, you need the reason you suspect abuse or neglect. An important note here, all of the above information is not needed to make a report. It is more important that you have the information that you make a report because we always want to err on the safety of the child. We are mandated reporters according to the Ohio Revised Code. As well, we have a moral and ethical duty to report to ensure the safety of our children. When giving your name in a report, this does not mean it's going to be released by the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, because again, your name is protected as a reporter under the Ohio Revised Code, as well as being protected by OSU's whistleblower policy. After a report is made, there's a series of possible scenarios of what could happen. Further information will be gathered, and that is part of the intake process, and then a risk assessment will be done, followed by an investigation if that is warranted. Regardless of what happens after a report is made, we leave that up to the professionals. We as 4-H volunteers and staff, our responsibility is to report when we see something that is happening and we know that is not in the best interest of a child. I want to thank you for participating in today's video training. We know that children cannot stop child abuse, but as adults we can, and we can make a difference in creating a better life and a better environment for our children. We all have a role to play in helping to prevent child abuse and neglect. This involves being able to recognize potential signs of neglect and knowing the resources available in our community. This also includes helping to connect families with needed social services. And at the club level, we can foster positive relationships with the parents of the youth in our club, and by offering words of encouragement, not only to our youth, but to our family members and parents. It is an important thing that we are doing when we're working with our youth. So with this training, we can continue to make the best better for our 4-H families.